Hi, this is Mallikarjun Rao. Today, let us discuss about force and types of forces. First in the list is coplanar forces. If a number of forces are on the same surface or on the same plane, then they are called as coplanar forces. So, diagrammatically, we can represent the coplanar forces like this. Since force is a vector quantity, we can represent that by arrows. And all these three forces, they are on the same surface. That's why they are called as coplanar forces. Coplanar means lying on the same plane. That is the first type of force. Second type is non-parallel forces. We can use the same diagram to demonstrate non-parallel forces. If two forces are not parallel to each other, they are called as non-parallel forces. In the given diagram, say this is the force F1, the forces are F1, F2 and F3. It is clear that F1 and F3 are not parallel to each other and they are called as non-parallel forces. At the same time, F2 and F3 are also not parallel. They are also non-parallel forces. F1, F2 also not parallel. They are also non-parallel forces. So, if the direction of force are not parallel to each other, then they are called as non-parallel forces. And the third type is parallel forces. In the second figure, there are three forces F1, F2 and F3. It is clear that F1 is parallel to F2 and F2 is parallel to F3 and F1 is parallel to F3 also, because they are all the parallel lines. So, the forces that are parallel to each other are called parallel forces. If they are not parallel, they are non-parallel forces. If they are parallel, they are parallel forces. Now, the fourth type is unbalanced forces. So, let us see what do you mean by unbalanced forces. If unequal forces are acting on an object parallel to each other, then they are called as unbalanced forces. If two or more parallel forces acting on the body, if the parallel forces acting in one direction and exactly the opposite direction are not same, then they are called as unbalanced forces. Here, on this body, from left to right, 100 newtons of force is acting, and from right to left, only 90 newtons of force is acting. So, two forces are acting on the same body, they are parallel forces, but they are in the opposite direction. In such a case, we can see some change in the position of the body. And in that case, the forces are called as unbalanced forces. So here 90 newtons and 100 newtons forces acting on the body are called unbalanced forces. After completion of unbalanced forces, let us see what do you mean by balanced forces. After completion of unbalanced forces, now let us see what do you mean by balanced forces. If two or more parallel forces acting on the same body in the opposite directions, if there is no change in the position of the body, then we will say the forces are balanced, or we can say the forces are balanced forces. To call a number of forces as balanced forces, first they should be parallel to each other and they should act on the same body and in the opposite directions, and whatever the forces acting in one direction, the quantity of the force acting in one direction is equal to the quantity of the force acting in the opposite direction. When all these conditions are fulfilled, those forces are called balanced forces. Let us see the situation diagrammatically. Now, there are three forces acting on the same body. One force is acting from left to right and the other two forces are acting from right to left. And the force acting from left to right is 100 and the sum of the forces acting from right to left is 40 plus 60 is 100. Here on the same body, two sets of parallel forces acting in the opposite direction, and the force acting towards right is equal to the total force acting towards the left side. So we cannot find any change in the position of the body, and then the forces are called balanced forces. So this is about the balanced forces. After finishing the balanced forces, now let us see what do you mean by resultant of the forces. Now here, two parallel forces are acting on the same body and in the same direction. If two or more forces acting on the same body in the same direction, then sum of the forces is called a resultant of the two forces. In this figure, 10 newtons and 20 newtons are acting on the same body from left to right. Since they are acting in the same direction and they are parallel, the resultant of the two forces will be 10 plus 20, that is 30 newtons. So, $30 newtons is the resultant force and the body moves from left to right. In the other case, let us see the figure number 2. In this case also, two parallel forces are acting on the same body but in the opposite directions. One is acting from left to right, second is acting from right to left. And of course they are not same. Clearly they are unbalanced forces. Then what would be the resultant of the two forces? The resultant of the two forces, when they are in the opposite direction, is equal to the difference between the two forces. So 30, 50, the difference is 20. So resultant force in this case is 20 Newton.